When you watch poker on TV, you're often going to hear the commentators refer to ace-king as a monster hand. It's often grouped with hands like aces, kings, and queens. This is a huge mistake. Sure, it's nice to look down at your whole cards and find an ace-king, but more often than not, if you end up playing a big pot with this hand, you're statistically way behind. The most likely situation is what would be called a coin flip situation, where the outcome is close to 50-50. For example, deuces against ace-king, that's about 53-47. Yeah, that's right. Even a lowly pair of deuces is a favorite over the powerful Big Slick. Big Slick is even worse off against some of the premium starting hands. Here is how ace-king does against the top 5 pairs. So as you can see, when Big Slick is up against these premium pairs, it is hardly a coin flip, especially against the 2 top hands, aces and kings. Of course, your opponent won't always have a pair, and when he doesn't, well, the ace-king does start looking like a monster, especially if your opponent has an ace or a king in his hand. If your opponent held king-queen or ace-queen, for example, you'd have him dominated, meaning that he would only have one live card to draw out to. In that case, your Big Slick would actually be a substantial favorite. Now that is the ideal situation with a hand like Big Slick if you happen to find yourself in a big pot. There is one other group of hands that your Big Slick might match up against that would be interesting to look at. 2 live cards that are suited. That should give you a little statistical background on the enigma of this hand. In some cases it is quite strong, while in others it's extremely vulnerable. So, in knowing this, the key to playing ace-king before the flop is to avoid getting involved in big pots when your entire stack is on the line. Too often, when your opponent is willing to put all of his money in up against you, he's going to have the dreaded aces or kings, which would make you a huge underdog to win the hand. If you find yourself in a no-limit tournament looking down at Big Slick, you want to be aggressive with it and attack the blinds. However, if you receive any resistance from your opponents, you should seriously consider folding the hand and waiting for a better situation. A few things to think about. 1, how many chips do you have? If you're short-stacked and need to win a big pot to get back in the game, well, then you should probably be very aggressive with Big Slick and go all in. However, if you have a good stack of chips and another player at the table raised you big time, well, then you likely don't need to get involved in this marginal situation. 2, how do your opponents play? This is a very important consideration when considering playing Big Slick. If the Rock of Gibraltar, a player who's extremely tight, re-raises you, you can be pretty sure that he does have a pair that just might be aces or kings. On the flip side of that, if your opponent is kind of a nutcase, he's wild and reckless, your Big Slick might be in great shape against a hand like ace-jack or even king-10. The important thing to understand about Big Slick is that it's a drawing hand. Now, if it's suited, it makes it the most powerful drawing hand you can be dealt in Hold'em. But remember, it's a drawing hand. It is usually only good if you pair your ace or your king, or get lucky enough to make a straight or a flush.